I'm delighted this morning to now introduce the second half of Village in Motion and Neighborhood 3 social worker, Elena Keydel. You know, I always want to put the emphasis on the last syllable. So this is the first time I've ever said Keydel.
Well, that's right.
And that is correct, isn't
That
it?
is correct, yeah.
Elena, you and I had talked, fortunately, a little bit ahead of time about today's program. You're going to be talking about a newly forming grief group.
Well, a reforming grief group.
Reforming,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we've had various types of grief groups here at Green Spring, kind of off and on, and
Definitely off and on. I
Yeah.
think we've all had that sense.
yeah, and I know just even in the 2 years I've been here, it's been very hit or miss as to whether it existed and what the format was and who was running it, and I know hospice was running it for a while, and so since they are no more. I've taken it over, and we're meeting once a month, a reoccurring grief group for all members of the community.
So this is going to now be a new constant.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
that's a wonderful thing. I think so often people would say, is there a grief group? And at that particular moment, there may not have been.
Right,
So
yeah.
this is a really good addition, I think, to the offerings at Green Spring, and particularly under social work. So that's excellent that you're doing this. Have you actually started yet?
So we've had a few meetings. We had sort of started, and then we had the flu epidemic.
Oh, yes.
And, so I think that put us behind a little bit because people
Everything
forgot
shut
we
down.
were. Yeah, people
Sure,
forgot we were in
sure,
existence. So,
sure.
But we've been meeting. I guess this was our third meeting. We actually met earlier this week, and I've had one or two people coming. So, but would like to grow it a little bit more, and obviously if we can have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, it makes the experience better for the residents that come, because the whole purpose of a support group is to have people to talk to and hear their experience. And
All right, so
what they're
sharing
going
is
through.
a big part of this.
Sharing is a huge part of it, and I think especially with something like grief that no two grief journeys are the same, but there are similarities, and there are things that perhaps you went through that I'm now going through, and so hearing that you went through the same thing helps me feel a little bit more comfortable and confident that what I'm going through is normal, and not worrying, that what I'm experiencing is a concern or abnormal or something like that.
Yes, I think the whole notion of being able to describe what you're going through in itself is a huge benefit.
Definitely, and just telling your story and telling your experience, and what happened to the person who passed away, and what was your relationship with them, and sharing memories, and especially as we head into summer, a lot of people would take family trips, or as we head into the holidays later this year, that's always a difficult time. So being able to share those experiences and those feelings, and I think also when we grieve, we experience a lot of things that we might not necessarily associate with grief. So you can have a whole range of emotions, everything from anger and sadness and loss, which we would absolutely expect, but people can also feel shock and relief and a sense of helplessness, and things that maybe people don't expect to feel or feel like they shouldn't be feeling. And so it's helpful to come to a group where other people can say, oh no, I absolutely felt that, and I, as the professional, can say, no, that's completely normal what you're feeling, and it's okay. And
there are some surprising feelings. I think we all remember some.
Yeah, definitely, and not just what you feel, but the way your body feels, and the physical aspects, the lack of energy, the physical manifestations. A lump in your stomach, a tightness in your throat and chest. A lot of people talk about feeling like they're not in the world. They walk down the street and don't feel like they're there, and those are all perfectly normal parts of it.
Oh, okay.
And parts of the grief process, and I think also the amount of time grieving takes. I think we as a society tend to think somebody dies and okay, we'll give you a couple days and now you're over it,
or
right?
even a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks and now you're over
Right,
it, and
right.
No. I mean, hospice grief programs run for 13 months after somebody dies.
Is that right?
13 months. And a lot of people actually say that year 2 is harder than year 1. Grieving is something that goes on forever. You never get over the person who died. And especially, we have a lot of residents that have been married for 40, 50, 60 years. you don't get over a spouse of 60 years or a friend of 60 years
No.
or a mother or a father or a sibling. You know, and so the idea that all just goes away after a certain amount of time is, you know, it's not true. And so helping people recognize that, and that those feelings can come back at any time. And, you know, how do you manage that? And how do
You and I
deal with
talked
that?
a little bit yesterday when we, or a couple days ago when we chatted about the Kubler-Ross stages.
Yes.
That so many of us remember from the, I think, late 60s, that was the
I
beginning
think
of
it was
that.
late 60s, early 70s.
Early
yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
And my recollection of that is that the implication was that it was a process where that there was an end to, that there was
Yeah.
closure. And
So-
clearly what you're saying is that is not true.
So Kubler-Ross, those 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it used to be that the belief was you sort of went through those stages one after another.
Sequentially.
And now it's well known that you don't, that you know, you jump from stage to stage, and you may be in anger one day and depression the next, and then acceptance, and then you're back in denial, and you know, you jump all over the place, and it's not a linear path at all, you know. So I think what grief theory is moving towards a little bit, and certainly what I believe, and you know, sort of what I work with residents in the grief group, is the idea of adaptation and becoming accustomed to this new normal. Because, you know, you're going to experience all these things and more. It's not just those 5 points, you know, but it's adapting those feelings and this new life into your current life. So in a lot of ways, it's figuring out how to keep your husband who's passed away as a part of your new life as you move forward, and how do you keep his spirit and who he was to you and who you were to him, you know, current in your life, but still move forward and continue to build your life and you know, be happy and have a full life. And you know, you never move on, but just the idea of not being stagnant after a death and
Stuck.
exactly. Yeah. So how do you create the new normal, and what does the new normal look like? And that changes. The new normal is very different 3 months after a death versus 3 years after a death.
Okay.
It's, you know, it's a constantly evolving thing.
All right, and I think there's some reassurance in that as a goal. I never thought about it that way. I think I've not heard it expressed that way. And that in itself, I think, there's a consolation to that.
Yeah. It's a journey. I mean, it's a journey. You're constantly moving on, and I think one thing that like Kubler-Ross had is that there is that end goal, and
Yes.
there is no end goal. You know, grief is something that's with you forever, and
Yeah,
you know,
I think that's certainly something that all of us have discovered, that
Right.
yes, you don't end grieving.
Right, yeah.
It does take different forms over time.
yeah.
All right. Again, the Kubler-Ross was so structured and as you're saying, so linear, that there was something very discomforting about that, I think, when we all learned about it.
Well, and I think also if you didn't fit into one of those 5 stages,
You wondered what was wrong
with you.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong
and,
with you.
And
It's-
so often going backward.
Exactly, yeah.
That somehow you felt like you were being judged for regression.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
it were.
Yeah. So
Okay. Well, I think this is extremely helpful. Elena, this is certainly something, you know, even for folks that come in, you know, long after their spouse has died or whatever.
Absolutely.
Our friends here die continually, and, you know, we're having family members die too. So death is simply amongst us constantly at this
Definitely.
age and
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a huge help. Who should folks talk to you if they're interested?
Folks can definitely talk to me. I'm the social worker in Hunters Crossing, and the group meets on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. So our next meeting will be June 20th.
3rd Wednesday of the month, and what time and where?
2 to 3:30 in the Town Center Cards Room.
All right. Now, is that one of those rooms that's going to disappear soon?
My understanding is it will disappear, and we will figure out where we will meet when that happens.
that
And
time?
I haven't gotten quite that far yet.
All
but
right.
we will make sure the group still exists. And I mean, I'm very committed to making sure that once a month we have this group, because I think it's really important
Right.
to having that consistency
Oh,
and
absolutely.
residents knowing it will be here. So.
There's no time limit? I mean, folks can come and stay as long as they need to?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All
Yep.
right. Do you have folks doing any writing?
At this point, mostly it's just conversation, but definitely, I mean, journaling is an excellent way for people to process their grief and work through it. If people aren't writers, drawing, you know, art forms, there's a
Interesting.
lot of different ways. And so, you know, part of what we do is talk about, you know, what have you done to help manage your grief, and what have other people done, and you know, what has been helpful and what hasn't, and you know, what are ideas that people can do to help them as they move through this journey.
Well, I think this is terrific, and we're very fortunate to have you and having you do this.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it's really important. So,
Thanks, Elena.
thank you.